Hey everyone, welcome. We have a friend of the pod that is going to be joining our discussion today and possibly some episodes in the future as well. I want to introduce my friend Annah from New Jersey. Anna, hello.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
When we were talking, we wanted to get different voices onto our podcast to come from different perspectives and challenge us in new ways. Anna, you're one of the first people I thought of. So just tell us a little bit about your background.
My name is Anna. I am born and raised in the New York, New Jersey area. I am Indian Orthodox by upbringing in terms of my faith formation, but I've been all over different types of churches, obviously yours as well. My formal training is in education first. I was a high school teacher, and then I went to medical school, and then most recently, last year, I graduated from seminary with a master's in theological studies and a concentration.
Princeton Seminary, correct?
I'm currently back in the health world. I'm associate director for a health research center at Rutgers University, still doing all kinds of faith-informed and faith-inspired side projects. When you asked me to join, I was like, that's a great little addition to what I'm about.
Awesome. Love it. And so you're at the Indian Orthodox Church now, right? You're a part of it. And did I hear you right that you preached a few weeks ago?
Probably once a month for the last year or so.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that is great.
It's been great. It's been great. I've had
a
couple different opportunities to share what I've learned with folks in my own tradition.
Love it. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. And I just wanted to introduce you to everyone. Have a great one.
Thanks so much. You too, Tim.
Welcome back to Roots and Relevance. We are in a series that we're calling Threads of Redemption. And last time we talked about this New Testament story, and we asked the question, what is all of Scripture telling us about? This series is really about that, about telling the story of God, the story of redemption throughout Scripture. We're going to start back at the beginning in Genesis chapter 1 with the original mandate from God to us. I gave you guys an article this week. Did anybody have a chance to read it? Anna, I know you were bragging about, like, you read it and putting Jonathan to shame.
I had to get ChatGPT to translate it for me so I could understand it.
Is that what you're calling Rachel now? Is ChatGPT?
No, I would not.
Oh my God. You're using AI to interpret AI.
There you
I like
go.
that.
Mm-hmm.
That is good.
It's more efficient
So
that way.
The article basically talks about, it was out of Christianity Today. It's called Artificial Intelligence Creation Mandate. And it's talking about the image of God and what AI is compared to the image of God. And I found this quote toward the beginning really interesting. It says, it also presents distinctly theological questions. Is the development of AI an act of hubris or idolatry or a reflection of the image of our Creator and a fulfillment of our calling to bring order and fruitfulness to the world? What would it mean to align AI tech toward human flourishing in a manner that reflects a Christian concept of what it means to be human? So the question in the article that I thought was really interesting was, is the development of AI an act of hubris or idolatry or a reflection of the image of our Creator and a fulfillment of our calling to bring order and fruitfulness to the world?
Can you define hubris?
Hubris? It's just
arrogance.
Do you have a mirror? Do you have a mirror around you, Jonathan?
I hope when this records on YouTube that my picture is bigger than the rest of your picture.
Exactly. I will make sure.
Is that hubris?
That is hubris.
It's extreme self-confidence. Let's just say that.
Listen, I'm just doing this for the podcast listener.
Right.
I want to make sure when we say hubris, they know what we mean.
Love it. So yeah, either that question or the article in general. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Hey, my thoughts are very simple. When you say, is AI a creation of hubris, are you saying that we're trying to exert our intelligence by creating an alternative intelligence? Is that the point of hubris is that we can do something?
Intelligence.
Superior intelligence to humans.
Yes, but I think where I would go with that is that with any tech, you can go so far with it, but then if you start to think that somehow power or this pseudo salvation lies on the other side of that tech, that's hubris, right? Like you take it too far. You take it 2 steps too far. Tower of Babel is a great example. We have kind of a bonus episode coming out that talks about this idea of when they bricked bricks, that was a new technology, right? They had never made bricks before, and that was fine. But then they just kept going. And they, built the tower, and then they end up getting scattered. I think there are a lot of examples of that. That's where the pride comes in. We begin to replace God with tech.
I'm going to say, I read this as, are we getting ahead of ourselves? But I also read the question, which is written as, is the development of AI an act of hubris or idolatry, or a reflection of the image of our creator and a fulfillment of our calling? There are a lot of different clauses in that. And it's like, I think just a huge false dichotomy. Like, those are not the only options in my mind and how to see the role of AI. So I think the second question, what would it mean to align AI technologies toward human flourishing in a manner that reflects a Christian concept of what it means to be human, is a much better question than, is it an act of hubris or fulfillment of our calling? Those are both big claims.
Yeah. Yes. And now it would depend, right? You can't just say it's one of those. Jonathan, go ahead.
But I was just saying, to clarify, Anna, what you're saying is, one more time, that was a lot. So I got the hubris part. What was the second part you were saying? Is this a fulfillment? Is the creation of AI a fulfillment of our creation? Is that what you're saying?
A fulfillment of our calling. I'm reading the question as, because the question is asked as a binary. Is the development of AI an act of hubris / idolatry? Or is it a reflection of the image of our creator and a fulfillment of our calling? And I just think creating a dichotomy between those is not where an answer to that would lie. Because as the rest of the article goes on to say, there's a ton of nuance in between these two poles of how we use technology, all kinds of technologies, including AI.
So would you say that the general perception of AI is that it's not neutral, but our bent is toward it being evil or can be evil, and that we don't see there's possibly a redemptive aspect of AI in the process of God using Christians to use AI for flourishing in this world? Are we sort of like C.S. Lewis in his space trilogy, where he goes, I think it's Out of the Silent Planet, where he's assuming that every image of UFOs and whatever, how aliens was always negative. What if there's a unspoiled, So is there something redemptive that can be brought out of AI? Is that what you're asking? Or was that sort of how you frame it?
Are you saying there's Martians?
When one Martian comes and tells me about Jesus, then I believe in Martians.
Are we overthinking this? Is the article overthinking? So as I read the article this week, Tim,
look at
only
you.
Because
Teacher's pet.
Yesterday you guilted and shamed me that I never read it.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
So my question is, the article was a lot about tools, and it goes through this whole thing about tools, and Jesus was a carpenter. And then we all of a sudden say, well, then is AI recreating the image? I didn't see the jump, and that's probably because I just didn't understand the article that well. Are we trying to make AI into this re-imaging of creation or re-imaging of his image? Is that what we're talking about?
I think that one of the things that they may be projecting into this article is that we are giving autonomy to AI. The better AI gets, the more that we're giving away, like our decision making. In a sense, we're like handing our lives and saying, okay, AI, guide it in these sorts of ways. I think anytime you take God, who, we always talk about super intelligence already exists, right? Like, it's literally God, and we're trying to create super intelligence. And so I think that's maybe where the author is going with this, of like, we're trying to create a mini God. So I don't know. Yeah.
I think
different thoughts.
I think that's right in your interpretation of the article, Tim. I feel like the question that's being asked is, are we moving more into our humanity or moving away from our humanity? And by humanity, I mean the vocation of being human, like what we were intended to do, how we were intended to live, who we were designed to be. And so does the growth of AI like technologies take away from that vocation, or does it kind of fulfill that vocation? Is my understanding of the question that the article is asking.
So are we abdicating our role as rulers and stewards of this creation to AI?
I think that's the danger. And I want to be clear. I think there are incredibly redemptive purposes that do go toward human flourishing. Like, for example, some of the medicines that are being discovered as a result of AI, it's hard to argue that that's not an amazing use of technology. But, when people begin to put their hope in it, like, I don't know if you guys have heard of the singularity. Have you heard that term? Like, it's this idea that once super intelligence gets here, there's almost going to be a fusion of humanity and the digital world into this sort of digital utopia, basically.
And
eternal.
yeah,
Yeah.
we
You live
become
forever.
eternal, yeah.
And, because you're in the cloud. And this is, by the way, not a small movement right now. Like, if you look, there are so many people that have almost replaced, like, it has become their religion in a sense. And I think that is really the question for us, is like, what does it mean to be truly human? And so that's what we're going to look at. Let's go ahead and get into the text. I don't know if anyone has Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 31. We'll start out and we'll read the passage, and then we may have to back up a little bit to talk about the context of Genesis 1 anyway. I mean, we all know it's a science textbook that tells us the earth is 5,000 years old. I get that.
6,000, thank you.
Oh, sorry, 6,000.
Is my sarcasm rubbed off on you, Tim? This feels really good. That really
Good.
warmed my heart that you were that sarcastic just now. Without an
I
apology.
know. Yeah. No
gosh.
apologies at all. No apologies at all. So, yeah, let's take a look. Who has Genesis 1, 26 through 31? And let us know what version you're using. Wally, you want to?
Yeah, I have Genesis 21, 26 through 31, and I'm reading from the ESV. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for your food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
All right. So, other than the fact that we all should be vegetarian based on that, let's go a little deeper. And like, the very first verse talks about "let us make." And I mean, it's singular, singular, singular. And then all of a sudden, has God developed multiple personalities? Like, what is happening here? Why did they go to plural is the question. And I know there's different thoughts and opinions on this. So, like, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, my tradition is, I was raised in the Indian Orthodox Church, and in my tradition, the "let us" is referring to the Trinity.
Yeah, that's how it was taught with her at a good old Southern Baptist church. So
And so
Yep.
I mean, when you think of us, you're thinking three, you're thinking God Father, you're thinking Jesus the Son, and you're thinking the Holy Spirit. There are other secondary patristic readings of this that see this as the divine council,
Yep.
beings, God, small g's.
And I would say, would you think that now the scholarly consensus is more that it's the divine council as opposed to Trinitarian doctrine? Or is it a mix?
It just depends who you want confirmation bias from.
I started to say,
Yeah.
who's the scholars you're talking about? Like
Yeah.
Christian scholars, secular scholars, or
That's true. Yeah, that's fair. Jonathan, tell us why we're wrong.
Heretic, come and share with us.
I wasn't really listening because I just enjoyed
What-
your banter.
Why is "let us make" not the Trinity?
Because I don't know who else the lettuce would be. I don't know who was in existence, unless you're talking about the angels, which we skipped right over on Genesis 1, 3, 4, and 5, of who the first created beings were. It could be the angels.
Yeah.
we also
I'm just
know
trying to
for
give
a
another
fact-
option. You always pick the right one. So I have to pick something.
Go ahead, Riley.
But we know that all three members of the Trinity are present in the first chapter of Genesis. You have the Spirit of God hovering over the waters in the very first verse. You have God the Father who's speaking the word. And as we learn in John, the word is Jesus. So it's all present there. So it kind of makes logical sense that the us would be the Trinity.
Yeah. Which psalm is it that talks so much about divine counsel? I'm blanking on the number now.
118,
Is it 118?
146,
You're just making up numbers now.
63.
Not
You're gonna
63.
see if I'll bite and be like, yes.
I got 150 choices unless I'm reading the Apocrypha.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, listen to you. 82. Look at that. I'm impressed.
I get a little nervous reading from the New Testament. It's the principle of like, it can't mean what it never meant.
It can't mean for us what it never meant for them.
I think the original audience, when they heard that, would be like, we have a problem with other gods and other spiritual beings. That's not how we were brought up in the church. The first century Jewish person would have no problem with God consulting other spiritual beings, knowing that he's going to come out as the one that's sovereign and making the decisions. No matter what we say, this conversation is a great example of taking a step back and asking what is happening in Genesis 1 overall before we even get to the mandate piece. What sort of text is this? We were joking about it not being literal, but if not literal, what is the cosmological view? What is happening in Genesis 1 that we need to know in order to understand this mandate in verses 26 through 31?
Well, we've gone over this in previous podcasts. I think in Jonah we went over this, and images and idols we went over this, probably parables. I don't know how much we want to go into it again today. Maybe the podcast listener can go back all the way from the beginning, a year ago.
There you go.
There's some good stuff.
That's fair at best, but I will say that we've talked about the cosmologies of what the reader or the listener would have been envisioning when they heard the story of Genesis 1, as we know it today from the Tanakh, of putting in their paradigm the story that God has given us as to what he sees the value of man in his creation, not as a slave, but as his image on earth, his reflection, everything that he is on earth, for us to enjoy it, to thrive, to be fruitful, to multiply, to enjoy his presence in the garden and in his earth. Of the listener, with regards to the Assyrian or Mesopotamian cosmologies of why man was created, why woman was created, and the power of the gods, and almost like this condescension of who we are as opposed to the Yahweh God of what we see in Genesis 1. Summarization enough?
Jonathan's favorite book is the Enuma Elish, and I think he actually thinks it should be in the canon. I'm not sure.
Just maybe the Apocrypha, but not the canon.
He's got a picture of Marduk on his wall.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jonathan, are you then saying that, like, who we are, like being created in the image of God, is a role more than anything else? Like, is it our function, or is that not what you're saying?
No, I think there's more a being than just a function. I mean, we're going to get in 2:15 of the covenant, what I call one of the covenants that we were given with God, and that's to keep and tend the garden, and what that truly means to me. But I think this is more of a who we are, not what we do. But I think we all would agree that what we do is an extension of who we are and how we were created and the intent of why we were created. That's just, I think that answers your question. There's other people you can pick on, Tim, other than me.
I agree with Jonathan. I think this is like, there's a Old Testament scholar, Carmen Imes, who does work on this in her book, Being God's Image. This is exactly what she said is the thesis of it, which is this is an identity. It's not a function. It's not a task, but it informs the functions and tasks that.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of what it means to be God's image really is the central question. If that's the premise, then what does that mean, which informs all the other decisions, including interpretations of specific words in some of these texts, like dominion and things like that.
Totally. Yeah.
If your image, what then, how must we read those
That's good.
words?
Yep. Anybody else on that? There's a lot there. I know for me, like I was reading a lot of scholarship that was, even the Bible Project, that was very much saying that the image of God was about like function and role more than essence and substance. And while I totally understand where they're coming from, the scriptural piece of that, because remember they went with talking about, is it the word selim for image? Literally means statue, right? And there would be these statues made of these gods that were meant to embody and be the presence of that deity. What's kind of cool is to think about that's what God is saying of us, that we are like living statues, basically, here to represent God. I guess what was making me nervous about the function thing is, Anna, you kind of talked about this, both you and Jonathan talked about this, is that if it's a function and it's what we do, I worry that that can lead to this sort of, okay, you're doing the things right and you're not doing the things right. And there's almost like levels to human dignity. Whereas it feels to me like if it's essence and substance, that's true of all people, period. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I think the relevance piece here, if we're going to go in this direction with Genesis 1 this morning, is I think the relevance piece is sometimes we get caught up in what we do for God, whether that's church, whether that's politics, no matter what it is, whether it's a social club, whether that's something that's helping out with social justice even. Sometimes we want to identify with what we do as opposed to identifying with who we are with Yahweh. And I think that's sometimes how we get things all kind of backwards, is that we lose our identity as that first we are Yahweh's creation, we are Yahweh's image, and that we should always be associated with Yahweh. And what flows out of that, if the being of the image is correct, then the function of that is just part and parcel of it. You know, when he tells us in 2:15 to take the garden and tend and keep it, our essence should always be focused on Yahweh. And then what we do with Yahweh is we act like priests of what he's given us to take care of. That's just my thought. If that's what you were asking, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let's pivot then and talk about, Anna, you mentioned the actual words that come out of the mandate, which are Radah, and our favorite Hebrew word, one of our favorites, is Kibosh. You know, when you put the kibosh on something, that is what we're called to do. We've talked about this in a previous episode, but for those just joining or a refresher, what do those two words mean? Are there nuances to them? How can we take them wrong versus how should we use this in a correct way?
I don't know.
You put the lid on it. You subjugate it. Like calm it down.
Versus Radah, meaning rule or...
rule, care for, oversee. It's almost feels like one feels more aggressive to me. I don't know if that's true.
I think we see both of those being played out in humanity, right? I mean, you see those that want to subject creation. And
Power over.
I know we zoomed in on Genesis 26-31, but 26-31 is in the context of God creating this universe, this creation itself. And this creation itself is an expression of who God is, of his glory and his might and his power and his creativity. And so he's created this environment in which he's now sending his agents to be stewards of how he sees his creation, how he thinks his agents should rule over it, reflective of who he is.
Right.
So when we have this picture of Kibosh, we're not just how we're doing, but this is how we see God. This is how we see who God is and his character and his nature, versus if we see Radah as, I am a steward, I'm a governor, and I'm here to protect and provide and to help bring order out of chaos in this place.
It's good.
I agree with that. I think the image that we have, or the perception that we have of God, must inform what it means to be God's image, like we just talked about, which means that we interpret this in light of what that perception is. And if we perceive God as, the epitome of goodness, that creation is an overflow of God's goodness, all these words have nuances that the English connotation can't capture fully, which is true.
Yep.
Translation, right? This is a totally different kind of line of conversation. Every interpretation, every translation is an
interpretation. Yeah.
Totally. And I think if Radah has a connotation of the idea of a servant king, Anna, to your point, we actually have a servant king that we can look to, right? Like that is like literally in Jesus, that's the model for us to Radah.
Isn't that what we were supposed to be initially, and that we failed to do? So we had to have somebody to help us do that for us.
Yeah.
Right? This is what Christ has come to do, make us truly human again, where we have failed in a lot of respects. And so this is what Christ has come to do, to save, redeem, to bring us back to what we initially were and were supposed to be in light of who we were created to be by God.
Totally. So like this series is threads of redemption. And so redemption implies there's a fall somewhere along the way. And Wally, to your point, we're given this mandate, and it, as we'll see in the coming episodes, it doesn't go well for us. I'm curious, how have you seen this mandate used wrongly by people, by Christians. Like, we're to be kind of kings. We're in charge of the earth now. Have you seen people take that one direction or the other in unhealthy ways, in ways that need to be redeemed?
Well, there's the.
But you're talking about post-fall,
Yes.
not
Yes.
pre-fall. We're talking about post.
I'm talking about today. Yeah.
Okay, post-fall.
Yeah.
I get the two big ones.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One is if we think about the words used in the ESV are subdue and dominion, specifically subdue the earth and have dominion over the fish of the sea and every living thing that moves on the earth. Environmental stewardship, right? We have extracted and exploited and destroyed, in some sense, natural resources to a point of no return for some of those, right? And we've said, I think some of the justification behind that is this is for us to take, not necessarily for us to cultivate and nurture and grow and maintain. The other example I was thinking of is the entire project of colonization. There's an undercurrent of the same type of logic, which is things are for us, even people, to take and redeem if we believe that we are the ones that this mandate has been given to, as in Christians or those who identify as followers of this particular God.
That's like a consumeristic vision of creation, right? That we are masters of our domain and we can do whatever we want because it's all created for us. And when we just consume, this is extreme. I know this is not most people, but I've heard some in the dispensationalist camp that are rapture ready. They'll tell you all the stories, but their mindset is literally like, oh, who cares about the environment or what we do because it's all going to be burned up anyway. And I think there's a lot of theology that we can have nuances on. That theology in particular is really destructive because it makes us just consumers of everything.
If the earth was created for us, then we're the centerpiece behind why God created everything, right?
Right.
So we have our Tara, my wife, is a 7th grade teacher, and we're having her team come over, and I've been smoking a butt all night. Boston butt.
Nice.
And I was up at 3 a.m. and I couldn't get back to sleep. And I started rereading Jonathan Edwards' The End for Which God Created the World. In which, if you've ever tried to read...
Princeton, what?
Yes, the very first president of Princeton University.
That's exactly what I would be doing at 3 o'clock.
Well, I knew I was going to be preparing for this podcast, and I just wanted to be on top of things.
That's right.
And I think Tim Mackey said something in the Bible Project in his coursework over Genesis chapter 1. He said that this current generation of people are the first ones to look at creation and not consider, we always consider the physical aspects and mechanisms and mechanics of how creation works and the elements and how it's derived, but we never ask the question of why. Why is it here? What Jonathan Edwards?
Yeah.
Jonathan Edwards.
I'll take an answer of anybody.
Jonathan Edwards would say that God does everything that is aligned with his character and nature, that is all about the reflection of his glory. And so creation itself, the reason he created it is somehow this brings him glory.
And
all
you're not
creation.
just talking about humans.
I'm not talking about just humans, right? It's just not humans that are going to be redeemed, right? We're the first to be redeemed, then creation itself will be redeemed because Romans chapter 8 says that. To think that humanity is the only thing that's really worth redeeming in this creation misunderstands the reason God has created everything that he's made, and that we, as part of that creation, are part of those redemptive processes. And that because of those things, that God somehow is glorious, made more glorious than he would have been otherwise.
But that doesn't play well into my American individualistic instincts, Wally. It's all, what's that? Exactly.
Well, yeah. Anthony DeMello, who's like this Catholic spiritualist, he writes these little pithy things, and he's talking about this situation, and he says that when reality meets generally rigidly held belief, reality is generally the loser. And so I think sometimes as we come into Scripture, we're reading it as like it's written for me, like creation was made for me, and that the Bible is written for me, to me, I should say. But it's not. It's written for you. It's so that you could see yourself entering into this story, not that it's this love story that you're the center of everything that this book's about.
Totally. And I think that's why the why is so important. You alluded to that, of we never asked like Jonathan Edwards was it? And it's funny, I'm not sure how aware he was at the time, but we know that like one of the biggest things of Genesis 1 was answering that question,
That's right.
why, when for years we just want to argue over age of the earth, how, like the mechanisms of action with that. And it's much more about the why. So yeah. Any other thoughts on that? There's a lot there.
I was actually still wanting an answer. So why were we created again?
For the display of God's
To
glory.
glorify God. Were you not?
There was a lot of words that were said. I just kind of
Let the listener
so
understand.
so we're to glorify God just like the rocks and trees are supposed to glorify God.
Yeah, that's what I got.
So then why didn't we just stop at rocks and trees?
Yeah.
Why didn't Yahweh just stop at rocks and trees?
Well, I think this is the purpose of what the rest of the story of the Bible is about, right? We have a created place with a created people for a created purpose, right? I mean, this is the story of the Bible, that God is creating a sacred space in which he dwells among his people, right? So the seventh day in Genesis chapter 2 is, for me, it's become a huge thing, this eternal day, this where God is dwelling with his creation of man and woman on earth as co-regents, ruling together, serving this creation that he's made in stewardship and as agency to show the world this is how it's supposed to be.
Right. I think heading toward that definition of image of God is way better than, for years, for me, it was always like, okay, what separates us from animals? And that was kind of like where we went with that. Oh, we have reasoning, therefore we're made in the image of God. We have creativity, therefore we're made. And all that's true, but the danger to me, especially with AI.
Can't you make that argument for AI? That it's a living being that's worthy of, that you can't unplug it?
Right. That you could argue it has creativity, that it has reasoning. It's an argument. I feel like the image of God is so much bigger than just our differences of how we're different than animals and AI. So, and I think that actually is going to become really important because, we talk about the dignity of human life coming from our bearing the image of God. And this was not the Relevance article, but I saw this and could not believe it. Have you guys heard about what Canada is doing with euthanasia right now?
Mm-hmm.
The 51st state?
Yeah. That's right. I was shocked. I did not know that right now 1 in 20 people in Canada are dying of euthanasia. Mm-hmm. Like, I was blown away by that. Like 1 in 20. And so I think this is going to be incredibly relevant because when you hear their arguments for it, they're using words like, we want to give people their autonomy and it's a grace to them. All these really nice words.
But we know the reality behind it.
It's money.
They don't want you to be a drain on resources. So leave it for somebody that has much better function within what we value in society.
It's going to become a culture of death. And the way they're acting like it's beyond our control now. It's just where we're headed now. And apparently they started it with only terminally, gravely about to die people. And now in 2 years, there's going to be a provision for mental health. Mm-hmm. As well, which seems like a bad idea. It's
scary.
Really scary of like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. Like being a dual citizen in Switzerland, I definitely have thoughts on that because Switzerland has not been great in this area. Let me just say that.
I don't have thoughts specifically about Canada or Switzerland, but I think it's important to say the creation of humans is different than the creation of everything else, right?
Right.
Going
Yes.
back to Trinity, going back to Spirit, like God breathed life is different from the other days of creation. And that does mean something. Like it does add to what it means to be image and what it means to be human eventually. So yeah, that was just like rolling around in my head as we were talking about differences, between humans and animals, differences in the creative parts of the story.
Yep.
I do think that detail is not a small one.
The fact that God breathed his life, what is it? Nefesh? Is that
Nefesh
right?
Hayah.
Yeah,
the living
Nefesh
soul.
Hayah. And it's funny, like that should be enough. But this whole discussion has been, Jonathan kind of alluded to this a little bit, but it's very Western. We want to break it down and go, okay, like what's the outline of the image of God? We want to break it down like that. Whereas like an Eastern thought, and I feel like they would just be like, yeah, God breathed life into us. What else do you want?
And then even the plurality of the creator, right? The presence of like in the human is both body and spirit in the Trinity is multiple persons, there is something irreducible about the relationality that's present here, which should inform the way that we are living and relating to other people. We are never intended to be on our own. Even an interpretation was never intended to be on your own. Like discussion and what we're doing today is part of studying, is part of learning, is part of growing.
Totally. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Jonathan.
No, go ahead.
I remember growing up hearing this cliche of like, oh, you're lonely. Like God is enough. And to your point, that like literally makes no sense, right? Because if we're created in the image of God, a God that is literally in perfect community with himself, then that desire for relating to other people, like that's not a bug. That's like built in. We're built in to be relational. So we do need people.
Well, you look at the whole nature of how he creates man and he separates woman out of man. And I think it was Mackey that said again that there's something that God images of himself in unity in plurality.
Yeah. Yep.
That we can only truly get a true sense of who God is by seeing separate things becoming one.
Yeah.
And that we see
that's different than uniformity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean
So
we
are
have to
you-
look and
Are you saying we're not talking about uniformity, we're talking about unity, and we're talking about man and female being equal in that unity? Just want to make sure. Okay. good.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to
Correct.
make sure after our images and idols,
Oh my God. We're not
getting
going
confused
there.
about what you said. Are you coming over to the dark side, Wally?
oh yeah, we're getting them.
All right. So my thought is to go to everybody's point here at the end. This is what I didn't understand about the article. I'd like to think that I'm a complex thinker, but I guess I'm not. I'm a really simple thinker. I guess I'm many things.
No.
Shut up, Tim. The thing that happens after day 6 is what? So, Riley, I did what your dad does. Oh my gosh. What
Set it up.
Answer it.
What God does after day 6 is day 7, which is absolutely nothing other than stopping everything he did because everything was complete. So he Shabbated because there was nothing else to be done for it to be complete. And for us to even have conversations that is AI the next thing for an image bearer, and the answer is it can't possibly be. Because if God, what he did on day 7 was stop and had not created AI, then there would be something else for him to do. And there was nothing else for him to do after day 6 because what he had created was not just good, but very good. And that very good was enough, and he Shabbated on day 7. And I like to think that there may have been a day 8. Maybe we're still living day 7. It's a fun little conversation to think about. But there was nothing else. Outside of AI being a tool that can be used for good or evil, there's never a conversation, and I know there is because we just read an article there was. But I don't know where the conversation stems from, where the root of that is for AI to be anything other than a tool for men to use or women to use, and never being what is the God-breathed image of Yahweh.
Tim and I were talking prior to the podcast.
Tim Mackey or
starting
Tim
today.
Nussbaumer?
Tim Mackey doesn't call me. Tim Nussbaumer does. We were talking about, I think we mentioned it in the images and idols when it came to understanding of mankind, that the term El Shaddai, where we normally translate Lord of Hosts or God Almighty, David Foreman brings out that that's not a real word in Hebrew. They see it as a conglomeration of different words that are making up a phrase in which he said you could translate this word El Shaddai in the one who says to his world enough. And could God continue to create things beyond day 6 that we could never imagine because we're not God? Yes, he could have, but he said, this is enough. This is good the way it is, and I can restrain myself from going further. We as humans, because
Kibosh it.
yes, he's able to put
Yeah.
kibosh on himself.
Yeah.
We as humans, apart from the restraining work of the Holy Spirit, we can't kibosh ourselves, right? As we talked about, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and what? Self-control.
Right.
Which that is a gift of the Spirit. Here in humanity, especially concerning the topic of AI, could we say it's fine enough as it is? But no, there's always going to be some people that we got to push it further because developing even greater capabilities is better than what it is now.
Jonathan sounds more optimistic than I do on this. Jonathan, like you said, it's just a tool. you don't necessarily see it going beyond that. Whereas I think Wally's whole point is that, is it difficult for us as humans to ever say it's enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that where you were saying it didn't make sense for you, Jonathan? It was like this idea that AI is just tools and is not going to get beyond that?
Are you saying you're disagreeing with me, Tim?
No,
Always
I'm asking
agree.
you to explain your
No,
great position.
All I'm saying is AI is good to make presentations and tests, but I don't think it was ever intended to be a God-breathed image bearer of God. That's all I'm trying to, of Yahweh. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying that we can't make AI more than a quote-unquote tool. We look at Tower of Babel. I know we're going to have a bonus soon enough about Tower of Babel, and was it just a tool, or did we use new tools to create something that was exclusive of Yahweh, or at least attempted to be exclusive of Yahweh? If you go back to the identity of who we are, AI was not a portion of that. AI has never been a thought of that when it comes to what a human is. A human is a representative image of God in his creation, post-fall, pre-fall, and then once he restores it in Revelation. We've always been the intended image to be a steward and to be present with him and glorifying him and loving him and, all of that. That's where I'm simplistic here. I just don't see the conversation about AI. I'm not saying we can't use it for evil means, and some may think that it's something more than it is, but I just think from a spiritual, biblical stance, I just don't see the conversation.
But I think the question is it a tool that we are currently using to go beyond the scope of what it means to be human, of what we were originally intended to be as humans? So I don't think the question is as much, is AI replacing the image of God as, replacing humanity necessarily, but are we using it in such a way that we are living beyond the scope of our ordained intention?
You're separating the theology from the reality of it, that, we can say one thing, but where are we headed actually?
Well, which is a good segue to what we're doing in this series. It's Threads of Redemption.
Yep.
Threads of Redemption. To go to what Annah just said, if we are going to misuse the things around us, we're really excluding ourselves from God, or at least creating our own little idols around us so that we can control, which we're going to see in Genesis 3 next.
Yep.
And that's the story of redemption, whether it's AI or whether it was a fruit on a tree or whether it was the snake or whether it's a tower or no matter what it is. How are we not resembling the identity of who we originally were to be? How are we functioning differently than what we were? And whether that's AI or a brick, to me, it's the same conversation of how are we excluding ourselves from Yahweh so that we can be in control of our own destiny?
And never underestimate the human capacity to make something a God that's not.
Yeah.
All you got to do is look at Romans chapter 1 that says, they worship the creation instead of the creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Right? And so AI is no different than any of the idols of oil or the idols of the Canaanites and Egyptians that made creation something greater than what it was intended to be in the first place. And they worship that as God. And so AI has as much capacity within the human heart to become those things.
Totally. And if you look at it throughout Scripture and then just throughout our history, like, we don't usually ever say enough when it comes to technology, even when it has good things. We discovered nuclear, and what's one of the first things that we do? Oh, let's make a bomb, right? And you can go through the list of all kinds of technology. Printing press, did great, like good, also did great harm, based on.
But even in the Tower of Babel, we see God's grace and redemptive processes in place. He didn't curse them by giving them a different language and sending them out. He was protecting them from themselves, right? Because they were...
And it actually wasn't even a curse, right?
That's right.
It was just a consequence.
It's right. He says, I'm protecting you from yourselves. In the ancient cosmology, you're trying to build a tower from earth to heavens to show that you're capable of equal with me. And he says, I'm not going to let you do that.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to send you out and scatter you throughout the face of the earth. That's what the cultural mandate was in Genesis chapter 1, right?
Yeah.
That we're to fill the earth and subdue it, not to gather in one place to control that, right?
100%.
And the part that gets preempted when God stops the construction is how that technology then informs us again, right? There's this directionality of we create technology.
Mhm.
But then there isn't as much a consideration of how that then informs us. Social media is a great example. Like we created, and there's hubris in creating some of it, right?
Yeah.
Also, the consideration of how has that now shaped how people, how has it come back to now shape us to create more technology? That recursiveness, I'm not sure that we're always conscious of. We just kind of think of, can we go bigger? Can we go bigger? But then what does the bigger do to the small c creator, us?
That's right.
Totally. It's what you were saying earlier. The line from Jurassic Park, you were so intent on whether you could, you never thought about whether you should. Well, I think this is a good starter conversation, and we're definitely already in the territory of what we'll talk about next time, which is the fall of, okay, the mandate happened, and then something happened right after that kind of put a kibosh to everything. And we're going to talk about that next time. I want to say special thanks to Anna joining us for our first time here. Anna, thank you so much, coming from Princeton, New Jersey. And yeah, excited to have you on this time, and hopefully some more as well.
I hope we haven't scared you off, Anna.
She won't tell you that now. It'll be later.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
It'll be an email to you. So.
Exactly. All right, everyone. Hope this has been good. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.